All right, everyone, welcome back into another NFL video. Going to be touching on the Week 3 deep dive here for you guys, touching on all my favorite player prop bets on PrizePicks Underdog, but also going to be touching on FanDuel, DraftKings, those spots as well as giving you guys my favorite game lines to be betting on as well. Let's go and get into it. And so as always, I will be doing a game-by-game breakdown, but I want to show you guys a quick update that I made to the 9to5 website, specifically covering the player props. So if you guys have been following me for PrizePicks and Underdog content, you know that I bring in the average sportsbook line data from several different sportsbooks to be able to tell whether or not we're getting a good edge on PrizePicks or Underdog with some of the lines that are out there. That's how we're able to have long-term success over PrizePicks and Underdog. That's how we're up over 12 units on the NFL season and 700 over the past 2.5 years now, which is obviously pretty darn good. I wanted to take that a step further because I had that data already, and so that's what you guys are seeing here right now. So the biggest thing when it comes to beating PrizePicks and Underdog is that their lines typically don't have juice associated with them, whereas a normal sportsbook would. FanDuel, DraftKings, BetMGM, all those popular sportsbooks have juice that is attached to their lines. So when you take out that juice, you can tell if you're getting an edge on PrizePicks or Underdog, which is great. We do that still with the average sportsbook line when we're trying to compare the best bets on PrizePicks or Underdog on DraftKings or FanDuel. I'm so set in the mindset of talking about PrizePicks or Underdog there. But we're still pulling in that data. So that's what we're going to be seeing here. The average overline, the average underline, that is what we're looking at there. So we can see the average line that we're getting, the percent likelihood for that to hit, and then what that prop line is specifically on average. Okay. And then we're pulling that in against the sportsbook line. So here we got FanDuel. What we're looking at is the line is going to be 10.5 on FanDuel for Brock Purdy to get under 10.5 rush yards. And so the reason why I bring up the juice aspect of lines is, typically speaking, we should never be gaining an edge on a sportsbook, especially when comparing their lines against other lines. Here on this, we are seeing that we have 3 right now. That is it, 3, which is pretty big. I mean, that's going to add up in the long term as well. And so these are all considered to be good bets. Brock Purdy for under 10.5 rush yards, Skylar Thompson for under 7.5 rush yards, and then we got Mike Gesicki to get over 2.5 receptions. Again, this is where we are gaining a slight edge on the sportsbook, all going to be FanDuel. Now, traditionally speaking, we're never going to get that many lines like this, guys. And so I added in the projected edge as well, which is going to be similar as to how it works. Not going to be massive edges as well. It's the lines give us, or the sportsbook give us these lines because they know they're not losing out on an edge. And that is the beauty of PrizePicks Underdog, because you can gain an edge. But this is just another way to go about looking at it. And I do want to call one other thing as well, just real quickly. If you flip the edge into the opposite direction, you could bet this way as well. So we got a flip line here, which is added in here. So with this flip line, what we're going to see is that the lines that we're pulling in for the sportsbook data, not the average sportsbook data, just the sportsbook data. So for flip, we're not taking the juice out because we want to gain that edge. We want to be able to establish that edge. And so when we're looking at this, what we are noticing here is that with the juice, they are drastically overvaluing the under. So thus, you could do the opposite of that. Even though it's not likely to hit, you could bet the over for Andy Dalton pass touchdowns. So the line is set at 1.5. So you could bet the over. And again, that's not a big edge. And I wouldn't do that because the projection data is also telling us not to do that. So going back to the projected edge here, that is another way you could go about attacking it. So looking at this, guys, the projection that we have is 197 for his passing yards. The line is set at 94.5. And so we can see, look at this, guys. So this is the best way to show you guys. 53% for the over and then 53 for the under to hit. So basically they're saying bet either side, right? FanDuel is. But when we go to the average line, we can see that the under is clearly favored. So the edge percent is telling us to bet the under. The projected data is telling us to bet the over. And so it's just a different nuanced way of going about attacking it. And so again, we got 3 that are currently good bets. And I just want to touch on that on the top because I'm going to be discussing that throughout this video as well. Probably spend a little bit too much time on it. Let's go ahead and get into the deep dive. And so the first game that we have is going to be the Giants versus Cleveland, which is going to be kind of an ugly game probably. Let's go ahead and get into what this game looks like. And I will be sticking on this NFL DFS cheat sheet here because it has everything included. You could be looking at the Sportsbook tab on the website as well, but looking at this, I'm going to flip the average line total because I'm assuming this game is going to be pretty low scoring as it is. So 38.5 is going to be the game total. The Browns are going to be favored to win by 6.5 points. I would say that that's correct. Looking at the injury report for the Cleveland Browns, they are going to be pretty banged up in general. But in terms of like new news, there really isn't too much. Pierre Strong, I would say, is the biggest one. Him being out is just going to lead to more work for Deonta Foreman. And I want to show you guys the snaps here, because I did find it interesting for the running backs, and it wasn't too shocking to me, but Foreman ended up with 38%. Jerome Ford ended up with 44%, but Foreman actually had a little bit more carries, like 14 carries in that game. Let me just double check, make sure that's correct. Yeah, Foreman had 14 carries. Ford ended up with 7. Again, that's not too shocking. In a game where the Giants... in the game where the Browns are going to be playing with the lead, I kind of expect Foreman to be used in the Derrick Henry sense. Like, think of Deonta Foreman as exactly Derrick Henry in the term of how a team's going to use him. We have actually seen this in the past a bunch. He's going to be the one where if they're going to be favored to win by 6.5 points, I do expect him to get the most runs. So any bet where Jerome Ford's potentially looking at an under, I'm going to decently like. And same thing for Deonta Foreman. And so let's actually stay with that. I'm just going to type in Jerome Ford first here. So nice to see that all the bets, at least on PrizePicks, oh, sorry, this is the Underdog cheat sheet. Let's switch that. All the bets on Underdog that we are seeing are kind of telling us to bet the under, except for his fantasy score. I don't know if I agree with that. It's not a big edge regardless. But what I wouldn't mind is doing the rush receive yards under, at least on PrizePicks, where it's actually slightly higher. You know, that'd be a decent route to go for Ford. So that is one where I actually want to bet there. But let's see if we're getting any better ones on like PrizePicks or as well. And then we'll check the average sportsbook line as well. So again, I'm on PrizePicks right now. I'm just going to search Ford. I want to see if we're getting any edges there as well. Rush yards. Yeah, rush yards would be the way to go on PrizePicks. With Underdog, with some of the lines, obviously we have to combine them together. So naturally, that's probably why the Underdog line's a little bit lower. But we can see, yeah, PrizePicks is just a little bit higher in terms of his rush yards. So I'm fine with betting the under for him there. But again, this only has a 51.9% chance to hit on PrizePicks. And so again, I want to reference this tool, the kind of top parts here. The reason why we don't want to typically attack those types of prop bets on PrizePicks or Underdog is we're not gaining a long-term edge on PrizePicks or Underdog. We can see how attacking bets that are under a 54% likelihood is going to hurt our ROI. That's why we want to be looking at. And so I'm just looking where, you know, maybe we are potentially finding the best edge in general for some unders here, and not exactly seeing it right off the bat here. Like, I don't want to mess with his receptions. I'm kind of okay with those lines. Let's look at the rush yards specifically. So PrizePicks is clearly the outlier here. I think we can kind of just see that based off of these lines that we are getting here. So that does establish that that's a good bet there. But really, all these lines that we are getting here are pretty much good, I would say. Probably looking at maybe ESPN bet for the under rush yards. They have their line set at 49.5. Minus 120, not exactly the best edge there. I wish there was a plus number there, but I'm okay with that. We can take that. That's a good bet there. And so let's see. Are we getting any other good prop bets here for the Cleveland Browns? We are seeing that on Underdog and PrizePicks that'd be as well. Potentially looking at Deshaun Watson for under his fantasy score. Now, I do struggle with this one. I kind of mentioned last week that I thought Deshaun Watson looked much better than he actually did. I thought he would be someone that would be a good candidate for his over fantasy score. We did see that coming to fruition last week. And so it's kind of up to you guys whether you want to run this out or not going against the Giants. That Giants D has not been terrible, but it hasn't been bad. You know, the day is telling us to bet the under. I worry that, like, the reason why this line's low is more of the public opinion on him rather than how he's actually looked on film. This is probably not saying much. He almost looked just as good as Dak in week 1. Almost. There's a few big difference in plays, 1 or 2 plays, and obviously that adds up. And then last week, Dak looked terrible and Deshaun Watson looked fine. That's maybe more against Dak, I guess, but not terrible. I don't know if I exactly love that one is my point. From there, though, like, we do have this little stack and opportunity here with Deshaun Watson and Amari Cooper. Again, the Giants defense has been good. It is a low game total as well, so I can somewhat get behind that little stack there if we try to do that. What we are going to notice, though, is that we aren't really getting that many Deonta Foreman props, but I wouldn't mind pairing those with Deonta Foreman's rush attempts here. That's really the only one that we're getting there. Rush attempts 10.5. I would say that's the correct line. But again, game script wise, if they are winning by 6.5 points, I think part of the reason as to how they get there is going to be Deonta Foreman over his rush attempts. And now that I'm thinking about this, this is probably going to be a good stack, maybe potentially on a sportsbook, a good parlay opportunity there, because it seems sneaky good. And I like the correlation there. Let's go ahead and jump on into the Giants. And so looking at the Giants injury report, nothing too crazy for them. They are still pretty healthy. And so let's see here. Are we getting any good prop bets for them? Well, kind of. I know on PrizePicks, actually, Wendell Robinson for under his fantasy score is slightly better there. Really on both sides, it's not bad, though. Wendell Robinson under his fantasy score. Again, in this game, that's going to be probably ugly. I don't mind this one. He is someone that was not as used as much as really you would want. Another one that was popping up earlier on in the week is Malik Neighbors for under his fantasy score. I don't know if we exactly need to go in on this one. Given that Cleveland defense, though, that has looked good, I could see betting both of those guys for their unders. But really, there's nothing there. There's nothing to really run back that Cleveland Brown stack that I like. Unfortunately, I will say if they are playing from behind, that should mean more opportunities for Devin Singletary in the passing game. Thus, I wouldn't mind, his over receptions here at 2.5. He's averaging around 70% of the snaps, which is obviously something that we like to see, but not one that I need to go crazy with there as well. So with that, let's go ahead and jump on into the next game. So like a simple slip could just look something like this. I would probably suggest maybe not going this heavy on the correlation because it does reduce the payout enough. So if you guys were watching this and there was like one or two that you thought was really good here, by all means, go for that. Let's go ahead and jump on into the next game. So in this next game, we got the Chicago Bears versus the Indianapolis Colts, which two teams that I feel like we're still discovering really who they are, probably because the head coaches don't know exactly who they are. What we do know is that Caleb Williams has looked bad. He has struggled as expected because, well, in the preseason, it was the exact same thing. So will that be more of the same is the biggest question mark going against the Colts? Could potentially be. We will see. I'm not saying he's a bust. There's definitely hope there, but what's happened thus far, not too shocking. And so we take a peek at this game preview here. What we're going to notice, this is a little bit more higher scoring of a game than I would have expected. 43.5 seems to be a little bit too high. That Colts offense, although I felt like it was more on the coaches, didn't look good. The Chicago Bears offense hasn't looked good as well. You look at the injury report for the Chicago Bears. They are going to be without Keenan Allen, which is, I think, noteworthy. Travis Homer is also out, which is slightly noteworthy. That might actually lead to a little bit more snaps for Swift. Homer has been kind of the third down back for them, so a little bit interesting there. In terms of injuries for the Colts, nothing crazy there. Do want to call out that Jonathan Taylor did have some strange usage in that game. He should have had 30 carries in that game against the Green Bay Packers, who have not done well against the rush. Only 12 carries in that game. I would argue that's why they lost, but interesting, in the fourth quarter, they didn't really play him. They actually elected to play Trey Sermon, who I would argue JT is a better pass catcher and run blocker than Sermon. If anything, Trey Sermon's a worse version of Jonathan Taylor. Like Tyler Goodson potentially having that passing down role would have made more sense. So the thought was maybe Jonathan Taylor was injured. All indications, all reports say that he was good to go. That was just a coaching decision, which pretty much sums up why the Colts are 0-2. Honestly, like they should have won in week one. Probably should have won against Green Bay as well. Just bad coaching decisions. And so with that, guys, unless we're getting any lines that are like perfect for us to be betting on, I don't think I really want to be attacking this game because I feel like it's going to be a little bit more difficult to like predict. And so looking at the first one, Rome Odunze for under his fantasy score, sure. On Underdog, that is seemingly going to be a good bet. You could pair that up with Caleb Williams to continue to struggle. I'm kind of okay with that. Anthony Richardson for over his fantasy score. I don't think that offense is going to look as bad as they did again. Like I guess I'd be okay with that one. I don't think we need to go there. Really what we're seeing here is that on Underdog, we have two bets, Rome Odunze, Caleb Williams for under their fantasy score. That should correlate as well. I'm kind of okay with that, but also I don't feel the need to go out of my way to target that. And then that's just going to be more of the same here for PrizePicks as well. But again, slightly better edge there on Underdog, so might as well make those bets there. And so again, because it's tough to really gauge what to expect from these two teams, only going to be running out these two bets, and that's going to be because that's what the data told us. Seemingly decent edges there, but nothing that we need to go crazy with. Don't love the fact that Keenan Allen is going to be out again. That should thrust some targets to Rome Odunze. At the same time, I would imagine that they try to force feed the football to DJ Moore a little bit in this game as well. But also, given the success that the Packers had rushing the football, we might see DeAndre Swift have a good game. But again, It's just, I don't know what to expect here. So let's go ahead and jump into the next game. This next game is kind of a fun one. We got the Houston Texans versus the Minnesota Vikings, the 2-0 Minnesota Vikings. Now, looking at the Vikings, we do have some injuries that we need to monitor. It does seem like Justin Jefferson is going to play. He's not even on the injury report. He was someone that was a little bit banged up. Jordan Addison is going to sit, though. So that's going to mean we're going to see more of Jalen Naylor. But I also want to call out Johnny Mund has been someone that's been playing a decent amount. Like, we look at the snaps for Jalen Naylor, who is someone that did pop in the preseason, someone that really just looked like Jordan Addison. I shouldn't say that, but like looked like he could be as productive as Jordan Addison. It stands out to me when he plays 93% of the snaps, seemingly replacing that Jordan Addison role. So I'm excited to play him. Obviously, Justin Jefferson got a little bit banged up. He's expected to go. But Johnny Mund getting 70% of the snaps last week is intriguing to me, especially given that this game could be higher scoring. It's one of the higher scoring games on the slate, so I like to see that. In terms of other players getting snaps, we are going to see Ty Chandler mix in there. We saw that a decent amount, actually. Ty Chandler has looked better than Aaron Jones. I do hate to say it as a Packers fan. Like, I love Aaron Jones, but Aaron Jones hasn't looked bad. Don't get me wrong. I would say they're using their two assets correctly. That, with a player like Ty Chandler, where you're using him more as supplement, I guess, supplemental role. Is that a word? He should look better, because you're not exerting him too much physically, in a main running back role. Whereas Aaron Jones, you might be doing that. I would say, that's my way of saying, if you put Aaron Jones into the Ty Chandler role, Aaron Jones probably looks better than Ty Chandler, but Ty Chandler would not look better than Aaron Jones in the current top running back role, if that makes sense. But really just a fun offense, and I hope that we are getting Naylor and Mund to be disrespected by the lines. Now, in terms of the Texans snaps, I do want to call this out as well. Some people are maybe a little bit panicked by the work that Tank Dell has been getting. Don't be. Honestly, what he has done thus far this year should be what you were expecting. He's more of a big play guy. That's what he was last year. That's what he's going to be this year. And they've been close to hitting. He's had some close big plays that he looks the same, looks good. And I don't think it's even too many mouths to feed either. I really don't. It's just the big plays that he had last year that he was hitting on, they haven't hit as big. Yeah, they're still there, though. They're still using him the same. So that's encouraging, actually. I know some people, fantasy football-wise, are a little bit panicked. Don't be. He should be good to go. Now, obviously, the big news here is the running back situation. So, again, let's go ahead and take a peek at that injury report. And Joe Mixon is currently doubtful for week 3. Okay, so we need to monitor that. And then Dameon Pierce is currently out. So that's going to mean Cam Akers most likely going to be the RB1 in this offense. I say most likely because Dare Ogunbowale is still there. He's going to be the third down back. We know that pretty conclusively. But Cam Akers is someone that did look good in the preseason, outplayed Dameon Pierce in the preseason. Really, don't want to say he looked like Joe Mixon. Mixon has looked good, but replaceable, like a replacement level running back. And so kind of excited to see what Cam Akers looks like. But again, expecting him to be more of just a first and second down back. For what it's worth, Texans only 1.5 point favorites. That seems a little low, doesn't it? I know the Vikings have played great. I don't know. It just seems low. And maybe this game total actually seems a little bit too high to me as well. The Vikings defense has played much better than expected. And if that happens, the Houston Texans offense isn't going to be playing as well. And then the game total is going to be too high. Or vice versa, the Minnesota Vikings defense finally gets figured out a little bit. And then this 1.5 point spread that Houston is getting, that's crazy. I could tease this to 4 points. I don't mind that. That's kind of crazy, the line that we're getting there. And so looking at the lines that we are getting here on PrizePicks, we could do Dalton Schultz for under his receptions, 2.5. Don't feel the need to go in on that. Nico Collins for under his fantasy score. Don't need to go in on that. The one I think I like the most is Tank Dell, again, for over his fantasy score. If I had to choose, 53.9% chance to hit. You compare this to the underdog line, to the average sportsbook line. This clearly seems to be the outlier here. So I'm happy to run this over fantasy score. Again, a big play is going to pop sooner or later. Cam Akers, we are seeing a decent prop line difference here. This really tells me that on underdog, we probably should be betting his under. They're slightly overvaluing him there. And I would argue, given the point spread that we have in this game, where it's 1.5 points, that 16.5 carries is probably a little bit too high, again, given how Vegas sees this game going. And then, so Cam Akers on underdog then is the kind of clear-cut bet that we should be running out there. I'm happy to do that there, actually. It's all about taking the edges where you get them. And so let's do that. Cam Akers under fantasy score on Underdog. Tank Dell over fantasy score on PrizePicks. Now let's see if we can pair that up with any prop bets for the Vikings. And so sticking with Underdog, all right, Jalen Naylor for over his fantasy score. Kind of, again, I'm happy to target that one given the fact that the data was already telling us to naturally do that. I am curious about his receptions one as well. Those should correlate pretty heavily. Like if he's playing 90% of the snaps, it seems difficult for him not to get more than 3 receptions. Niners defense, a little bit more difficult of a matchup in that game as well. 4 targets in that game, had a touchdown. He's been having a good run thus far. So I'm kind of okay with that bet there on Underdog. Other than that, nothing too much there. No tackles and assists or anything like that. So let's jump into PrizePicks then again. And for PrizePicks, you could do Aaron Jones not to score a rush or receiving touchdown. Only about a 53.8% chance to hit, but not terrible. Like, we'll take those odds. Those are fine. But we don't really have anything else to go in on there. So I do want to check out Johnny Munn. I kind of mentioned he was playing a lot. And so looking at this, guys, I don't mind the over receiving yards actually on Underdog here. Compared to the average sportsbook line, that one's off by 3. And again, if he's going to be playing 70% of the snaps again, I'm fine with running that over there. So decent edge, it seems like, on Underdog for this game. And actually on Underdog, we are getting some tackles and assist props for this game. So I'm going to use those with the bet of the day here. Well, not the bet of the day, but the bet of the game, if you will. And so we do have a nice little flex bet here for this game, which, is decently good. So again, jumping on into the next game, we are going to have the Saints versus the Eagles, which to me is actually kind of probably a game that's going to be more difficult to project and predict. The Saints have been a team that has played much better than expected, both offensively and probably defensively as well, although you would have expected them to play well defensively. But just how will Philly look in this game going against the Saints, especially with A.J. Brown still out as well? Taysom Hill is someone that's currently questionable as well. I do think that changes the dynamic of the Saints offense if he is out. Does that mean Foster Moreau, who's been the tight end one, kind of traditional tight end one, does that mean he gets more or less snaps if Taysom Hill is out? Like, I don't know. We don't know that just yet. We did see some interesting stuff with Philly and Brennan Covey getting some work last week in replacement of A.J. Brown. We were wondering who that would be. But my biggest question is, did that happen because Johnny Wilson was just a little bit too banged up to really get a full allotment of snaps in that game? So those are just some of the questions that I have in this game that I don't think we'll have the answers to. Now, looking at this game, the Saints are actually 2.5-point favorites. I think that has to do with A.J. Brown being out. And the Saints have looked good thus far. Really just dominating on offense. Really good offensive game plan thus far. Now, it is a high game total, 49.5. To me, seems to be a little bit too high. I do want to take a peek at those Eagles snap counts, though, specifically in the receiver position. And so this is what's crazy to me. So it was Jahan Dotson that played the most, 79% snaps. Devonta Smith did not lead the field, kind of as expected in that game. But they were spreading out the snap share amongst those other receivers not named Jahan Dotson. It was interesting that they went out of their way to give Covey 2 red zone targets to try to make him score a touchdown. Like, that was definitely on purpose. He was definitely involved. So interesting there. But I do think Johnny Wilson would be still the guy that's going to get more snaps. But with that, let's just jump into the top prop bets for this game. Are we getting any edges that I personally like and agree with? I would say no, at least on FanDuel. Maybe we could go, no. I mean, we just, like on Underdog, I would say the lines that we are getting are correct. Again, we don't need to make bets on every game. It's nice to talk through it, but I don't think we really need to do that. I was hoping maybe Foster Moreau, who is someone I wouldn't mind betting on because I think he's going to get more snaps. I wouldn't mind betting on him. And I would say if Taysom Hill's out, that could lead to more snaps for Jamal Williams. Traditionally, maybe a couple more rush attempts for Jamal Williams. And heck, maybe even more snaps and carries for Alvin Kamara. We just don't know that yet. I'm kind of expecting Hill to play, but we don't know. And really, the only good one on the slate would be Dallas Goedert for under his fantasy score. That's really it. That'd be on PrizePicks, so nothing too crazy there, though. I think we're good with moving on into the next game. And so jumping on into this next game, it's going to be the Chargers versus the Steelers, which both defenses are really good. So I'm expecting this game to be a low scoring game. In terms of like news, Romaine Wilson back. How many snaps will he play, or will he play at all? Is that going to make Calvin Austin a thing of the past? Potentially. Obviously for the Chargers, Quentin Johnston has been thankfully kind of living up to my expectations for him this year, maybe not everyone else's. I was thinking he'd be the receiver number 1 there, which has come to fruition. We'll see, though. It's a long season. Land McConkey's only going to get better and more reps. And then Josh Palmer has been someone that has struggled, currently questionable. And then on top of that, guys, we do need to look at Justin Herbert. Kind of took a weird hit on a play that he shouldn't have even been trying to make. That's what got him injured in that game. So hopefully a learning moment for him, but he is currently questionable. It did look pretty banged up. That could mean bad things for the Chargers in this game, to the point where I might be leaning towards the Steelers. And looking at the game preview here, this is going to be a low scoring game in this one. And the Steelers are favored to win by 3 points. So I would probably agree with that assessment there. So I was hoping it'd be the opposite way and we could maybe gain an edge, but no, it's not. So it's fine. Now, I do think it's important to call out the snaps for this game. We did see Johnston get the most work. Again, not too shocking there. In terms of snaps, though, for the running backs, J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards did split their work. Gus Edwards is not going to go away, especially in games where they're trying to have the lead and play with the lead and really just run out the clock. Again, this is like Baltimore last year. We actually saw this with Gus Edwards last year. Instead of it being the Derrick Henry role, it should be the Gus Edwards role, I guess. But very similar stuff there where, if they're trying to grind out the clock, it most likely will be just Gus Edwards. And then for the Steelers, I do want to call out that we did see much more of a running back split between Harris and Warren. It does seem to be that week 1 kind of potential drastic change there was mostly due to Warren being injured, so he should be good to go in this game. In terms of the receiver snaps, I do expect Calvin Austin snaps to maybe go down if Wilson is healthy. But George Pickens, Van Jefferson, they are clearly getting the most work here. And so again, this is a game that doesn't really get me too excited to bet on too much unless we are getting clear-cut edges. And again, on Underdog, that is just not the case. I would argue Jaylen Warren for over his receiving yards is a good bet, just because we did see him kind of have this role last year. We do see the lines at about 15.1, not a big difference there. But if he is going to be playing that many snaps, then I do expect him to get maybe a little bit more work in the passing game as well, given the fact that he's one more game healthy. If you look at the weakness of this Chargers defense, it is slightly against running backs as well. So I do expect this one to be one that hits. Do we need to go crazy with it? No. At the same time, is it one of the better bets that we have? Yeah. So I'm kind of happy to run that one out. And then we go ahead and flip this around, looking at it from PrizePicks. Not much there. Not much there. Again, a game that I think we can mostly just pass up on here and feel good about it. The fact that we don't have to bet on this game. All right, so getting into the Denver Broncos versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Definitely an interesting game in the sense that, man, can the Broncos play worse on offense? I don't think so. That is very tough to imagine there. Going against the Bucs, this should be a better matchup for them as well. I don't I don't know what to think of the Denver offense here, so it's going to be weird to see what lines are out there. We know that the Bucs have been defeatable via the run game, and we did see Javonte Williams be more involved last week than he was in the previous week. What was interesting about last week in terms of Javonte Williams, or 2 weeks ago in week 1, is that he did not start the second half. Yeah, I don't recall seeing him play in the third quarter, maybe late in the third quarter. It was actually Jaleel McLaughlin getting a lot of the work. I don't know if they maybe scheduled Javonte Williams one series, Jaleel McLaughlin one series, and then Audric Estime one series. But it seemed like with Estime out this week, or this previous week in week 2, that potential role for Estime went to Javonte Williams and not Jaleel McLaughlin. I actually haven't looked at the snaps. I want to see if that ended up being true. And yeah, that is what happened. Okay, so I'm not crazy there. Again, it was just weird how much work McLaughlin got right away in the second half in week 1. So if we see more of this, Javonte Williams, who I would say was the best part of their offense, and that's because Sutton couldn't get involved, I would say he'd be someone we can bet on. And then while we're here, let's just take a peek at the snaps for the receivers. Cortland Sutton played a lot. Actually, Josh Reynolds did not play as much as I thought he would with Devon Vele out, which was a little bit shocking. Josh Reynolds did look good, especially at the end of the game. Made some good catches. He needs to be on the field more. That just seems like a mistake. Tight end wise, it was a lot of Greg Dulcich in this game, more than anyone would want. And so hopefully they correct that. Now, looking at the Bucs as well, we do have an interesting situation with the running backs. Rashad White, currently listed as questionable. I think the expectation is going to be that he's going to play. And actually, this clears it up. He is going to be good to go. So how much work will he get? I don't know. Bucky Irvin, I would argue, has looked better. And I think it's only a matter of time until Bucky Irvin starts to take over. Although White is a good security blanket for Baker Mayfield. I would argue part of the success that Baker's had is partially due to White. And so we jump into the top prop bets in this game on Underdog. We're going to see some tackles and assist props popping up. We could potentially run out Chris Godwin for under his fantasy score on Underdog. Not a big edge there. Cortland Sutton for under his fantasy score as well. Honestly, I don't hate those two. Both defenses haven't been like that terrible, especially against stopping the pass. Now, Denver's defense, I feel bad for them. Not as bad as it's looked. But really, these two right here, tackles and assist props, are fine. But again, not too many big edges here, I would say. I do want to take a peek at any potential Javonte Williams props in a second here. But let's see. So, interesting. So, this Mike Evans prop is interesting. So, at 5, it was actually one that you could potentially bet the under. Now, at 4.5, it's one that you want to bet the over with because chances are the line should just be at 5. So, that's interesting that they dropped that one down. Bo Nix is someone that does need to rush the football more. I'm kind of surprised by that one. Devon Valet, coming in off of an injury. You guys know I love him. Love to be able to bet on him. Honestly, if this told me to bet the over, I would do it. But this passing game has been brutal. Let's just stay away from that. But what we're noticing here is that we're not getting any of those Javonte Williams prop bets popping up that I would have liked to. So let's jump on into kind of the DFS, or sorry, the traditional sportsbook props for him. And yeah, we're not getting any good ones, I'll tell you that much. So what you can sort by if you guys are using this tool is going to be the line minus the projection. And so obviously 49.5 minus 47.2, not good there. I want to bet his over rush yards. So let's flip this around, seeing if we're getting any that we can do. Maybe receiving yards, tiny edge there. Here we go. Another tiny edge, I guess. In this case, BetMGM for over 44.5 rush yards, maybe, potentially. Can we just bet on how many snaps he's going to play? Over 50% of the snaps, I'd rather bet that. Interesting here. So, I mean, we got this on Fliff. This is kind of the line here, 44.5 for his rush yards. Again, I just think he's going to be on the field more. This is the weakness in the defense. I would be fine betting his over, but this is just telling us to really just pass up on this. And I will say, I would love if we were getting like 1.5 receptions for Devon Valet. We're not getting that. So these are the top 2 prop bets that we are getting in this game, but we don't have anything to like pair it up with them, running it back with Denver because it's Denver and we don't want to do that. And again, the edge that we're getting is more so on PrizePicks rather than Underdog. Underdog, we are getting a couple of those tackles and assist props that will probably be pushes, but still not terrible bets for us to go in on. Again, let's jump into the next game. So in this next game, we got the Green Bay Packers, my Green Bay Packers versus the Tennessee Titans. The Malik Willis game, I'm thinking it will be. Mostly because I believe the Packers can beat the Tennessee Titans without Jordan Love at quarterback. Sit him one more week, get that victory. If you're 1-2, kind of, you don't want to be 1-2, especially given the schedule that you had where like you probably should have beat the Eagles. I would argue if it was played on a different field, they would have. Then you beat the Colts pretty handily. And then you're going against the Titans, who probably should be 2-0. You know, a couple of bad decisions by Will Levis was poor, but overall, the Packers have looked like the exact, like with Malik Willis in that quarterback, probably the exact same team, maybe a slight edge, honestly, to the Packers with their run game with Josh Jacobs, who looked good, although both defenses will see against the rush game. That's going to be something we want to be targeting because they're both pretty poor against stopping the rush. Now, Tennessee's defense has been good against the pass. That is something we should monitor. That is a concern. So looking at this game total, this is going to be one of the lower scoring games. I think that's just due to this should be the exact same game that the Packers just played last week, where they're going to try to rush the football a bunch, assuming Malik Willis is the quarterback. And the Titans should do the same. Like, they're going against the Packers, who haven't been able to stop the run. And Tony Pollard has looked good. Looking at the injury report, Tajay Spears was a full participant. He did look a little bit banged up. He has not looked nearly as good as he did last year. I do think he actually is probably a little bit more banged up than what's being reported. That is what I see. I don't see him be as explosive, especially in the last game. There's a few eye-popping plays where I'm like, I had to go on and search it. And I was like, what's going on here? And so the whole theme this offseason was that they're going to ride the hot hand between Tony Pollard and Tajay Spears. The expectation would be that it'd be Tony Pollard kind of getting the start in the first chance at that, and he's taking advantage of it. If you look at last year with Pollard, who came into the season a little bit banged up, that seems to be gone. He looks good, guys. He looks really good. And so I think we're going to want to bet on Tony Pollard, just betting on him getting more snaps. Now, I will say 2.5 points for the Packers. I think I'm okay with that. That probably is a little bit of bias. Full disclosure, but I think I see them winning this game. And so looking at the Packers injury report, Jordan Love's the biggest one, limited on Friday. We'll see. Obviously, that's a big bump to the passing game if he plays. Worth noting, 2 of the starters for the Packers defense could potentially be out. Obviously not a good thing for them. Tucker Kraft was someone that was questionable heading into this week. He's good to go. A full participant on Friday's practice. And so this is a game that I want to do a little bit more of a deeper dive with, but we're just not getting those prop bets yet because, again, like if Love plays, it does change the dynamic of this game. They're going to give us Malik Willis props because, well, it doesn't matter. Like if he's out, these don't matter. Josh Jacobs, I would argue like his production probably doesn't change too much regardless of which quarterback's in. Again, Jordan Love would still be banged up. I still think they would try to establish the run, but we are seeing Quay Walker for an under 9 tackles and assists is a decently good one. Guess I'm okay with that. And then we jump on into PrizePicks. Again, more the same. It makes sense why we are getting the lines that we are getting. Unfortunate. This is a spot where I do think we are going to have an edge. So looking at the Titans, at least we are getting some lines there. For Tajay Spears, again, is he healthy? That's the biggest question mark that we have. Tough to say, really. It just is. Again, I would want to bet on Tony Pollard. Like the rush yards here, I guess on Underdog, 62.5 would be the route I would go. So maybe we can do that. Let's see if we're getting any other good prop bets here for the Titans. And no, not really. I do think it's worth noting that you do have DeAndre Hopkins still not playing a full allotment of snaps here, which is concerning to me. But really, I think we have a couple of edges here. So let's give you guys a underdog bet here for this game. And so looking at, guys, a couple of tackles and assist props that are likely to be pushes. Quay Walker under tackles and assists. And then Xavier McKinney over 5 tackles and assists. And then Tony Pollard for over 62.5 rush yards. Now, I do want to take a peek at Tony Pollard a little bit more so here, seeing if we're getting any edges that we can really go in on. Again, I want to do is over rush yards. So like BetMGM here, Hard Rock Bet for over their rush yards. Those are probably the 2 biggest edges that we have there. Potentially Fliff as well. Fliff has his line 1 yard higher, which that might not seem like much, but that can add up here. And just as an FYI, guys, the projection data is slightly factoring in the average Vegas line and the line that's coming in for that specific sportsbook. Just as an FYI, that's kind of more of data control. That's more of DFS lines as well. That goes into it. So it's never going to be massive. There is a projected line that I come up with as well. That's based off of DVP, average, obviously Vegas lines, some other sites' expectations for that week as well. And so that all goes into it. But these are the 3 sites where if you are looking to bet on that, these would be the sites that you could do that on. You could do rush attempts as well. Like I don't mind that there as well. Do want to give a quick reminder to you guys of one of the sponsors of today's video, myself, 9to5 Sports. So guys, head on over to 9to5sports.com. If you guys want access to these tools, as you guys saw, I am always adding in new tools for 9to5 members. This is one that I've been working on for really since the start of the season. Check it out. A part of that, you get all the prop tools that you've been seeing in this video as well. So if you use the promo code Keep Cashing, get 20% off your first month. So make that $10 a month membership $8 for the first month. All right, guys, deep breath. Going to move on into the afternoon games. Now, honestly, guys, here while we're kind of doing the fluff part, make sure to give a like. This is a lot of work. I love doing it, but it goes a long way if you guys show that you appreciate it as well. I know last year we had a lot of success doing this, so that's why I'm trying to replicate it again this year. So looking at the Miami Dolphins and the Seattle Seahawks game here, guys, interesting news items here. So one, we got to start with Kenneth Walker, currently doubtful. So that's going to mean we're going to see a lot of Zach Charbonnet, or Cabernet, as people like to call him, the wine man, if you will. Interestingly enough, could not get a run game going, and then you saw last night or 2 nights ago with the Jets, able to get a run game going against that Pats defense. So I do think that was more of a testament to Zach just not being that good, potentially a little bit of a worry there, but he's going against the Miami Dolphins, who I did tweet out last week. I'm like, all right, running backs against Miami, got it. Like they're bad. The Dolphins were against the run. So if we get 20 opportunities or so out of the wine man, as I'm going to refer to him, terrible nickname, really. Then I'm like, we should be targeting because Walker's going to be out. Kenny McIntosh did not nearly get work that I thought he would get. Looking at the Dolphins, Mostert, I think, is expected to play, which I would say is a good thing for HM. He can still be used in the passing game. Probably want to target more of HM's receiving props. And low-key, guys, I don't want to say a good injury. That sounds terrible. But Chenault not playing is good for JSN and Tyler Lockett, and probably the wine man as well. Because, I don't know, teams just love the idea of getting Laviska Chenault some design plays. And if we can just eliminate those from the playbook, That's just going to mean more predictability for us that we don't have to deal with. Oh, the 10 snaps that Chenault gets in, 2 of them are design plays to him. Like, we don't have to deal with that. I like that. And obviously the big piece of news is that Tua Tagovailoa is not playing in this game. It's going to be Skylar Thompson starting at quarterback, which is why the Dolphins are going to be 4.5-point favorites, which also a little bit shocking that they're only 4.5-point favorites. Could potentially due to Kenneth Walker being out, who Kenneth Walker is so good, guys. Like, trade for him if you can in your season-long leagues. One of the best running backs in the league. Easily, I would say the most underrated running back in the league, Kenneth Walker. But I would say interesting line here. Higher scoring game as well. 4.5 points. Interesting, I would say. That's the best way to describe it. Now, I do want to take a peek at the Seattle Seahawks snaps, specifically at the running back position. Yeah, it was a workhorse workload. It was. So, yeah, we're probably looking at the wine man as a good bet in this game. So, again, starting out with the underdog lines here, probably more of the same in terms of these tackles and assist props. If you guys are maybe confused as to what these lines mean here, when it's 5.5, the line's bumped up to 6. That's because at 5.5, that is a massive edge that we are getting. So, these are slightly different. Why I say these are pushes is these lines like this, tackles and assist props, rush attempts, rush or receiving or receptions, I should say. Those ones that are not yard based, kicking points, the ones where they can just round up to 0.5, I guess, is the best way to make it an even line. The way to look at the edges for that is basically all lines should be 50-50 split, especially when they're a push like this. So look at it that way. But the over has a 4% higher likelihood to hit than the under does here, which is a little bit different than a normal typical EV bet, if that makes sense. Like here with this line for tackles and assists, we can just say 52.6% chance for the over to hit, or under to hit, under to hit. Whereas this, look at it more of, it has a 50% chance to be a push, and that extra 4% is the likelihood for it to be over, if that makes sense. And so these are fine. But again, what I want to see here is more Devon Achane receiving yards. We don't need to do that. It's not a good EV bet. Man, that's a lot for Zach. Let's see if we're getting any other lines for him. The lines that we're getting here are not good. I was maybe hoping for receptions. The rush receiving yards seems to be correct. This seems to be someone that if you guys want to bet on him, you do it on a traditional sports book. And why not? Let's take a peek at it. See if we're getting any good edges there for him. Rush yards, better on BetMGM flip. That's where we're getting the edges there. In terms of projection data versus the line, again, the way I'm looking at this is I know I want to bet on him in some capacity. This is where we could do it. Receptions as well, 2.5 receptions. I do expect him to get 3 in this game. Just again, you want to attack Miami with the running back. He played a workhorse workload. I would say his best attribute is his ability in the passing game. So yeah, I'm fine doing either. Probably 2.5 receptions, honestly, than the rush ones, because I am a little bit worried about how bad that rushing game looked last week, but certainly happy to do that there. And then looking at the top prop bets for PrizePicks, I kind of like the JSN 4.5 receptions. He got targeted a bunch last week, and that's not too crazy. And so I think I'm okay with this. Noah Fant, this is interesting here. 2.5. He was more involved in the passing game last week than I expected. I want to see his snaps. Yeah, guys. So he's played 75 and 81% of the snaps. Let's do that. All right. Let's go Seattle. Geno Smith looked good last week as well. Probably one of his better games over the past year, especially against a difficult defense. Aaron Rodgers didn't think so, but yeah, I like these two. All right. And I know what you guys are going to say. Looking at his game log, it's ugly. I get that. Better matchup. Better matchup is all I'll say here for Fant. And so, like, if we're looking at a bet for this game, I think this is the way I would go. JSN over 4.5 receptions. Devon Achane for 4. I think he's going to get 4. That's going to be the line. And then Noah Fant over 2.5 receptions. It's more I want to attack this game. Again, I think probably, honestly, these two bets right here are ones you could use with Charbonnet for the lines that are discussed on the traditional books. I think these guys would be good targets there as well. All right, so now jumping into the next game, we got the Carolina Panthers versus the Las Vegas Raiders. So in this game, probably going to be still a bad quarterback play. Gardner Minshew, I don't know, he's been a little bit worse than you would want, I would say, but also good enough for getting the ball to the players you'd want, minus Jacoby Myers. That being said, Bryce Young is obviously going to be replaced here, so it's going to be Andy Dalton starting. I think this is going to create some good edges for us. Now, looking at the game total here, guys, around 40, which probably higher than you would think. The Raiders are going to be about 6-point favorites, which if Andy Dalton is even slightly better than Bryce Young, that should greatly improve the offensive production. Guys, there were so many plays there where I do feel bad for Bryce Young, and honestly, I think Caleb Williams is like literally 2 or 3 more games away from literally being, he is Bryce Young right now, but like being cemented as Bryce Young again. Like the bad offensive line play leads to what we have seen with Bryce Young this year, and so I'm a little bit worried for Caleb Williams with that, where it just becomes a habit where you're just trying to get out of the pocket a little bit too much. You're looking to avoid being hit too much, looking to avoid the sack too much, to the point where it hurt Bryce Young a lot in terms of seeing the field, in terms of when he does see the field correctly, even making the throw. He missed a bunch of open touchdowns. Like he should have, honestly, 5 touchdowns at least in terms of like big plays that he missed with his arm. And so if Dalton is Dalton, like I don't know, I'd be fine betting the cover here, which sounds crazy to say. I get that. In terms of injuries, nothing too crazy. I want to take a peek at the Raiders snap counts. So tight end wise, we are seeing Bowers play around 60% or 65% of snaps. Like to see that there for him. But the running backs here. So Zamir White, the coaching staff was extremely vocal about wanting to get him involved last week, that they felt it was a mistake to not get him going last week. And we saw it happen. We should see that happen again this week against the Panthers. Like it should be the Zamir White show. Now, Madison, honestly, not as involved as I would have thought. Obviously, this is going to be more game script dependent, it seems like, where Madison's the third down back, the back you play when you're behind, but definitely an interesting split here. My bet would be on to see a healthy dosage of Zamir White, but obviously if you got a quarterback there that's improved, you're going to see longer extended drives as well, which hopefully will lead to just more rush attempts in general for this team. Worth calling out as well, Trey Tucker playing around 69% of the snaps on average. Interesting there for Las Vegas, I would say. Then for the Panthers as well, looking at their snaps, it is still going to be a split between Miles Sanders and Chuba Hubbard. This is something I mentioned, I think, in the week 1 deep dive, where it was one of the bets that hit that I ended up running out, where I'm like, all right, we got a decent stacking opportunity here where we're betting Chuba Hubbard for under whatever it was. I think it was rush received yards. We're going to bet Miles Sanders for the over, I think it was rush yards, because I didn't think it would be the Chuba Hubbard show like some people were trying to say it was. And it turns out that was the correct take. That continued into week 2, although Chuba Hubbard was much more involved. I don't know if I would want to attack either of them, but that edge that we got in week 1 is seemingly going to still be there based off of what I have already seen thus far in the props market, because, and DFS wise, people are valuing Chuba Hubbard more than they should be, because Miles Sanders not going anywhere, hasn't looked terrible as well, just for what it's worth. Like the separation and talent between these two, I'll reiterate it, not as big as what people think it is. I'm sorry, it's just not. Snap-wise, we are seeing healthy dosages. Adam Thielen, Deontay Johnson, just need to get them the football. They've been open a bunch. I feel bad for them. I do. Get them the football. That's why they made the change. And then for what it's worth, Tommy Tremble back last week, ended up playing 46% of the snaps. Sanders still played 50% of the snaps. That was noteworthy. And so, guys, again, starting out with Underdog, one of the better bets that I think we are getting on the slate is Andy Dalton for under his fantasy score. I know I mentioned, I just talked him up a bunch, right? But we are seeing a decent prop line difference between PrizePicks and Underdog. How they are valuing Andy Dalton, this is a 55.5% edge. Like, this is huge. That's because Vegas does not seem having a good game, although he could. But this is just a massive prop line difference. This is a clear outlier on Underdog, so we should be betting this under here. I feel pretty good about that. At the same time, I could see Deontay Johnson having a good game, but like, we could easily stack this with Andy Dalton. Like the Raiders defense is still pretty good. So don't mind that. Like, we are getting a decent opportunity there. Devontae Adams to get over 10.5 receiving yards in the first quarter. Not a terrible one as well, especially if we are looking to maybe do a little bit of a game stack here. Obviously, you don't need to force these, but not terrible there. So decent edges there. And then looking at it on PrizePicks, basically more of the same. I mean, Thielen, Jacoby Myers for under their fantasy scores. Maybe you could go there. I don't know if we need to, though. And so just like a little bit of a 3-slip bet here. I don't exactly love the Deontay Johnson under, just simply because all offseason they're talking about how awesome Deontay Johnson was going to be. He was going to be the focal point of this offense. That hasn't come to fruition. Again, that's mostly due to quarterback play. So it wouldn't be surprising to see him just have a massive game. So maybe you just want to do the top 2. Now, I do want to take a peek at, again, the traditional prop bets just to see if we're getting any good edges for Zamir White, because we saw we weren't getting that on PrizePicks or Underdog. All right, so maybe. So again, we're looking for some overs, really receiving yards potentially. I don't think we need to go there. I think what I want to look at just specifically, rush yards, rush attempts. I would rather a rush attempts one. So here we go. ESPN bet. over rush attempts. Don't mind that. So minus 110 for over 14.5 rush attempts. I'm okay with that. Again, I think this game's going to be closer. I think they want to establish the run with him. I'd be happy to do that one. Another decent one here, really on both sides, but the payout is going to be better on Hard Rock Bet. So I think that's mostly Florida, a little bit of Indiana. If you guys are someone that's watching from there, there you go. But you could also do it on Fliff. Slightly worse payout, minus 125 on Fliff, so not the best payout difference there. So minus 115 on Hard Rock Bet, you'd want to do that there. You also have BetMGM minus 120, so not as good, but still pretty decent there. So don't mind that there. Let's jump into the next game. But first, guys, just a quick reminder of some other video sponsors. We got Underdog here, so I've been giving out a lot of Underdog slips. If any of these interest you guys, make sure to sign up for Underdog. Use the promo code 925 spelt out, and you guys will get at least $100 deposit match of up to $100. Check that. It's $100. I think it's more than that right now. So before you do it, just make sure. And then we're going to be checking out the PrizePicks promo as well. I hate doing promos, guys, but kind of need to do it as well. It's an easy way to support the channel as well. If you guys have never signed up and you are looking to, both sites constantly have promos going on their website, especially during the NFL season. So again, if you guys have never signed up, it is a good time to. I wouldn't be calling these out if it wasn't. But use the promo code the number 9TO5, and when you do that, you get a $50 deposit match when you spend your first $5. So both good promo codes. Take advantage of those. All right, so now jumping into we got 3 more games left. We got Detroit versus Arizona, which another kind of fun game. Both teams are playing well. The Cardinals are playing really well, kind of as expected. I thought they would be a good money line bet to win against Buffalo. That did not come true. I believe they covered, though. They kind of let that game get away from them. Buffalo also looks great, but Cardinals look good. Detroit looks good as well. I do want to call that a lot of people seem to be surprised about the lack of production for Sam Laporta. This is something that I warned people against at the start of the season in terms of fantasy football drafts as well. The issue with Sam Laporta last year that I had drafting him this year, especially where he was going as tight end number 1, was the fact that a lot of his production did not come from his physical abilities, his talent. It came from scheme. It came from the offensive coordinator. And the reason that is not a good thing is when you start to have someone that's talented that you can also scheme big plays to, that's going to hurt a player like Sam Laporta. And now he has been being asked to block a little bit more, but that's where I was concerned that he was just being overvalued by the fantasy football community. Now, is he bad? No. Did he actually start to look like a pretty good tight end as the season progressed last year? Yes, but the production that we have seen from him is not shocking, especially given the development of Jameson Williams. And so I don't think that's any big surprise. I mean, I'm surprised at how well Jameson Williams has looked. All camp they were talking about him, and I just didn't believe it because we've been there, done that, where they talk him up and he doesn't look good. But he has looked great. And so this is my kind of long way of saying, do not do an over bet for Sam Laporta if you are also doing a Jameson Williams bet over. It shouldn't correlate. But I did want to call that out because for some reason there's just been the weird bias there with Laporta. And I could be completely wrong by that assessment. I haven't seen it, and I'm someone that just needs to see it. And Laporta just hasn't lived up to that hype. So we could do Jared Goff for under his rush yards. I actually don't mind this one. I want to look at his game log here, seeing if he's gotten this over on both teams for that matter. And so that's where I know Trey McBride is someone that's coming in off of a good game. You could bet his under as well, just given the fact that, again, both teams seem to have good offensive coordinators for that matter. They're going to be attacking the receivers, well, the DBs, I guess, and the safeties with their receivers. Kind of interesting that this line hasn't been bumped at all, just for what it's worth. The tackles and assist props here, 53%. It's kind of the annoyance of Underdog and PrizePicks lately is that anytime we are getting any sort of resemblance of an edge over them, they just instantly bump it. So I did want to call that out. And then also ASB for over his receptions, a decent edge there as well. Again, a little bit surprised that this hasn't been bumped. And then jumping into PrizePicks here, guys, another spot where we are getting some of our better edges here. And so it's kind of works out here. We have a little bit of a nice game stack here where, again, I kind of mentioned if we're betting Sam Laporta for under his fantasy score, that should correlate well with Jameson Williams for over his fantasy score. We can see that on PrizePicks. This is a clear edge that we are getting compared to how Underdog's valuing it, compared to how the projection data likes it, and compared to how Vegas is valuing it as well. It's basically you round up to, it's at 10.48. So round up to 10.5. Basically the exact same line as PrizePicks, which is cool. because then we can just kind of directly take the percent edge of that bet. So it'd be 53.5% chance for him to get that over based off of how Vegas use it and put it into the PrizePicks line. And so that is a good edge that we were getting there. I like that one. Trey McBride for under 5.5 receptions, maybe pushing it too far. I don't know if we need to go there, but not terrible there as well. And that pretty much tells you why his under fantasy score on Underdog is one that's popping up as well. So a little bit of a concern because it's weird to want to attack the unders in this game because it is the highest scoring game on the slate and a very close game as well projection wise. So 51.5 is the game total. So that is where the hesitation comes in with betting unders, because if it's just a shootout, defenses aren't playing. And let's be honest, like Trey McBride, more of a slot receiver, if you will, with how he's being used. Laporta, not exactly that, but it's definitely something to note, the game total of this game. So here we are getting a pretty solid edge here. Now, I was going to include the Jared Goff under rush attempts or rush yards of 0.5, basically betting on him to not get a rush attempt. The line is actually at 1.5 on Underdog. I'm fine betting that under, but when I attach that to this slip, it made the payout much worse, like by like a unit, which I don't like that. So looking at it, guys, like I am a little bit worried about betting the under on James Conner. When he's healthy, he looks great. But we are getting some good edges here. So I like this. Kind of like the slip a little bit better on PrizePicks. So let's jump into that. Now, again, I do want to reiterate, like I would be more inclined, more excited to just bet overs in this game, just given the fact that it is supposed to be a little bit of a shootout. And so maybe pairing two under receptions is not the way to go. So if I had to do like a two slip bet, it would be these two here, Michael Wilson and Jameson Williams, for their respective bets here. Jared Goff for less than 1.5 rush attempts. Again, we already see that the rush yards is a good bet for us to bet the under there. But if we're doing that, like might as well just bet his rush attempts under, because that's more so the bet that I think we're doing there. And so I'm fine with that. All right, so two more games up. We got Baltimore versus Dallas. And really my biggest takeaway is Dak or the TV program needs to come up with a way, maybe AI. Anytime Dak says, here we go, and you catch it on your TV, AI should change it into something else. Like sunflowers and daisies for one random thing. Like every time it's different, you know, like peanut butter and jelly, like just random stuff like that. Quick Trip, something like that. I don't know, whatever. Best gas station out there, in case you guys don't know. It's annoying, is the point. That was probably the worst part of watching film this last week, is hearing Dak say, here we go, 25, 30 times. Very annoying. Anyways, he looked terrible. And so I'm kind of worried that he's going to look bad again in this game as well, going against another difficult defense in Baltimore. Against Cleveland, did not look good. The stats and kind of the game maybe didn't say it. It was a blowout, you know, but he didn't look good in that game. Kind of got away from some good throws. And then last week did not look good. This is probably the worst I think Dak has looked in his career, honestly. Tough matchups. It makes sense. I expect that to continue against Baltimore, although Baltimore, not as bad of a defense, or not as good of a defense as they've been in the past. Like CeeDee Lamb, probably going to have a good game. Michael Tolbert had an awesome game. And I'm actually curious how many snaps he had last week. And yeah, he played 86% of the snaps last week. So if Tolbert's going to be playing a lot, and I think it's warranted, like he was the player that kept standing out to me on film. They tried to get Turpin involved too. He didn't look bad, but Tolbert looked good, guys. Like he looked like, all right, they got their receiver number 2. I mean, it's Cooks, but he looked good. And now the one worry that I have is that maybe they just did a little bit more 11 personnel. I didn't look into that just yet, but because Jake Ferguson was out, they did a little bit more 11 personnel. 10 personnel, or they just didn't have a tight end out there. They elected to go with 4 receivers, a running back. I didn't look into that at all, but it is interesting. We did see a little bit more Rico Dowdle, which if you guys kind of been following the channel, not too shocking, 43% of the snaps he did start. And then the game really started to get out of hand as they started playing Zeke more. It's just like, don't play him. Like he is productive. He doesn't look bad, but for whatever reason, the offense just does not flow as well with Zeke. We saw that 2 years ago. That's happening again this year. And we'll take a peek at this game. It is projected to be a high scoring game. Okay. So close game, 47.5 points, half a point spread basically. So it's a toss up. I agree. It should be a toss up. I don't know. Baltimore, man, I could not be a Baltimore Ravens fan. The way that they just lose games and give away games every single season. They basically played the exact same game every single week. Very annoying. And for what it's worth, Dallas as well. Dallas is either dominating a team like we saw in week 1 or getting dominated. Like that happened every single game last year, except for like, I think the stat was, and I looked this up myself, I just don't remember it, was like over the past 2 seasons, they've had like 4 or 5 games where they haven't been blowouts in some capacity, like more than an 8-point game, which is crazy. Like a little bit more consistency there, Dallas. And so looking at the top prop bets in this game, for underdog, we are seeing Isaiah Likely for under his fantasy score be one of the better prop bets on the board for week 3 on underdog. And a lot of people might be hesitant to do that because of the primetime game, because of Kansas City double teaming Mark Andrews, leading to Isaiah Likely having a big game. We didn't see that really in week 2. And so I'm kind of okay with this. Like Mark Andrews is still the player I'd want more, and they're still behind Zay Flowers. I just struggle to see Likely having a good game, but at the same time, we have a decent little tackles and assists stack that we can run out there. And then that's going to be more of the same on PrizePicks as well, but you could also toss in CeeDee Lamb to not score a touchdown. Not exactly an EV bet, but not terrible. It does seem to be that we're more just betting on underdog for this game. So guys, just a small little bet that we can make on underdog here. Again, just kind of going with those tackles and assist props that are kind of being valued as pushes. And then Isaiah Likely for under his fantasy score. We are seeing that underdog is a little bit overvaluing Isaiah Likely compared to Vegas, compared to PrizePicks as well. I do want to take a peek on Jalen Tolbert, though, see if we're getting any good prop bets for him, as well as Rico Dowdle on a traditional sportsbook. So let's start with Rico, and I don't hate the idea of betting his over rush attempts. At the same time, that's not one where the projection data loves it. And we're not going to see any good bets really in that regard for him. Kind of unfortunate. I do think he has a chance to have a good game. And kind of work his way into the workhorse back as well. Let's see if we're getting receptions props for him. Receiving yards, maybe. Bet is over receiving yards. I want to look at receptions. So this was a bet that I loved in week 1. He didn't play as many snaps as I was expecting, so thus he didn't get that much work. But if we look at it, guys, like his average receptions, 2.5, projected to get 1.2. I would disagree with that here. Vegas line is at 1.5. Defense gives up about 1.34. I don't know. I like the over better here. It's heavily likely for it to happen. That's why you're not going to get it on PrizePicks Underdog or anything like that. But like really DraftKings over 1.5 receptions, it's minus 180. Like really not a good bet. But again, I kind of wanted to find a bet for him and that'd be the bet, I guess. But let's look at Tolbert, because Tolbert, guys, he really popped. This is one of those things where I like watching film, because he would not have been someone that popped up to me had I not seen that. Like you look at the stats, you're like, oh, he was just a focus in the game. No, he stood out. And so let's see if we're getting any good bets there. And so far in terms of like versus the projection data, not so much. Let's see receptions, 2.5. I'd be fine betting the over 2.5 receptions, minus 130, minus 123. Let's do that. Bet online. Not many people play there. DraftKings, yeah, over 2.5 receptions, minus 125. Average 3.5. Don't care about the projection, because again, we're betting on him having more snaps. This might depend on Jake Ferguson. Even if Ferguson is back, guys, maybe doesn't play a full allotment of snaps. And I don't know if they need to risk it. And so it is a little bit dependent on Jake Ferguson, but I like that. I don't mind that. Fliff is giving it minus 140. They are crazy with their lines. Always the most aggressive. They are. It's crazy. All right, so we jump into the last game on the slate, and I even checked to see if we're getting many bets for them, because it might be tough for the bookmakers to give us good lines on these because of all the injuries that are occurring here for these teams. So let's do it team by team here. So looking at the Niners, Deebo Samuel is going to be out. Okay, so that's going to mean a lot of Jawan Jennings. That's going to be my expectation, is that we're going to see a lot of Jawan Jennings. Maybe as the receiver number 1, while Brandon Ayuk is still getting up into football shape, game shape. That's part of the issue of sitting out a whole camp, is that you start off slow, and maybe that continues. I doubt it, but also I got to mention the fact that George Kittle is going to be out as well. So that drastically changes this offense. And I don't know exactly who we can expect to be the tight end 2. I don't know if that's actually going to really matter. It's probably going to be Kyle Juszczyk in some capacity, in the sense of replacing that kind of production. And he has been someone that they have used the past 2 games. Again, not shocking. I mentioned this both weeks now. Not shocking at all. Maybe the amount of production is shocking. 5 targets in week 2 and then 40 receiving yards in week 1. A little bit shocking there, but his overs were things that I mentioned last week. I do think we're going to see a healthy dosage of Jordan Mason again, especially given the matchup with the Rams, because they are extremely banged up as well. So looking at the Rams, guys, they're going to be without Cooper Kupp. They're going to be without Puka Nacua. They're still without Tyler Higbee. And so with that, I do think we're going to expect Jordan Whittington finally to be the Puka Nacua that I've been calling out. Like I mentioned, Devon Valet and Jordan Whittington were the most two likely players to be this year's Puka Nacua. And it's not like a top 10 receiver, but it's more clickbait, honestly. But he looked just like Puka Nacua in the preseason. And he was kind of treated that same way as well. And the thing that I think is important is that when Cup went out, it was Whittington getting the most snaps, kind of replacing that. And so I do expect that to continue. Just logically speaking, watching it and watching the preseason, Whittington was the better receiver throughout the preseason. That was pretty clear. And don't get me wrong, I love Tyler Johnson as a player. I honestly think if the Packers drafted him, they win the Super Bowl that year when he was a rookie. Because guess what? He had a big game against the Packers as well. That's not the reason why, but they needed a receiver. They didn't draft a receiver. Tyler Johnson, honestly, I think wins them a Super Bowl just for two reasons. One, he doesn't make a big play against the Packers. Two, he makes some big plays for the Packers. Anyways, he's good. I like him, is my point. But Whittington has kind of clearly been the guy. So I want to find a bet on him. And then also, I think with those players being banged up, we're going to see Kyren Williams get a healthy target share as well. We saw this last year where when those players were out, it kind of was the Kyren Williams show in terms of the passing game. And guess what happened last week? He actually started to get some design pass plays to him. 5 targets in that game. I think 3 of them were like clearly designed plays, whereas week 1 and throughout the tail end of the season last year when Cooper Kupp was back, we saw Kyren Williams kind of get those like extend plays type of targets rather than design plays, which I'm always geared up to like target those design plays rather than random plays. And so those are the 2 that I'm really looking to bet on. And then potentially Jordan Mason. I don't know what to think about Brock Purdy, to be honest with you guys, because Brock Purdy does still get a good matchup. And so it's more about can Kyle Shanahan still scheme up a good game? I think so, but it's a bet on Brandon Ayuk not being trash. And he's not trash. I'm not saying he is. He's good. I like Brandon Ayuk, but he needs to be better. He needs to step up a little bit more, but also part of that was scheme. So they are going to scheme Brandon Ayuk into a good game as well. And so again, just starting with underdog here, we are noticing right away, one of the better bets that we were getting is Matthew Stafford for under his fantasy score, which I don't know. Like, again, I do like Jordan Whittington, and this is a decent matchup. Not great. Do expect the Niners defense to be good, but obviously you take away his top pass catchers. Like, yeah, we probably are going to be inclined to bet his under, especially when he doesn't rush the football that much. So I'm kind of okay with that. One that I am staying away from, and we don't have to bet it, it's under a 54% chance to hit, but would be Kyren Williams for under his fantasy score because, again, I do think he's going to be involved in the passing game a decent amount, so I don't want to touch that one. Other than that, we're really not getting big edges elsewhere, just at all. So I want to look at some of these specifically more so. So let's look at Kyren Williams. So Kyren Williams here, rush attempts 15 on underdog, maybe 15.5 on underdog. No receptions prop there. Let's see. Are we getting any Jordan Whittington? We are. Okay. I think I'm fine with his over fantasy score. I'm actually curious as to his line on PrizePicks or not. But I don't mind the over receiving yards here, 31.5. Give me that. I like that. That's a good one. And then let's see. Are we getting any good lines for Kyle Juszczyk at all? Maybe receiving yards. Again, I do think he's going to be used in the passing game. I'd rather do receptions for him. So let's jump on into PrizePicks, seeing if we're getting any. Well, let's take a peek at Brandon Ayuk real quick here as well. Yeah, nothing really there for Brandon Ayuk. His lines are clearly elevated because he is expected to have a better game. So the top prop bet is going to be Jordan Mason for under his fantasy score, which in a way I could kind of get. Like that's going to be the offense is Jordan Mason. You're basically betting on him not really being involved in the passing game too much and not scoring a touchdown maybe. I get it. I don't know if I want to bet that. Kyren Williams, we see his receptions line is at 3.5. I'd be fine betting the over there. And so that's something where, again, more on the traditional side because we don't want to force a bet like that. But I think that's a good over bet. Jordan Whittington as well, guys. Like these are 2 bets that I like much, much better on a normal sports book. Are we getting any other lines here at all that are like ones that I think we can target? Let's see. I mean, Tyler Johnson still probably would be involved, but I don't know. It's always interesting to see the way that Sean McVay tries to scheme up things. I don't hate this line for Juwan Jennings for over his fantasy score. Like he should be heavily involved. Actually, I think I really love this line here for Juwan Jennings for over his fantasy score, 8.5, especially compared to how underdog is valuing him. I'm okay with that. I like that one. And so I'm going to put out a PrizePicks slip here, but I want to echo that you'd be better off placing this bet on a traditional sportsbook or Fliff if you guys want to do that. Or Sleeper, if some of these lines are available, do that. And so again, these are going to be better bets on a traditional sportsbook, and we'll take a peek at that. But man, I really like this line, I think, for Juwan Jennings. I just think he's going to be more heavily involved, and the Rams defense kind of struggling as well. Like, I think this is the route I want to go to include in the bet of the day as well. Let's take a peek at these these two lines here on a traditional sportsbook. All right, so taking a peek at Kyron Williams here. Rush attempts, definitely rush attempts here on DraftKings and FanDuel. FanDuel specifically, -120 for him to get 15.5 rush attempts. If this game is close, he's going to get more than that. I don't know. That's an interesting line there. I'm kind of happy to do that one. But I wanted to take a peek at the receptions specifically because I think that's where we are gaining our biggest edge, especially in terms of like how Vegas is viewing it versus how I view it. Now, the projection day is not going to like it, but where are we getting the best line to bet the over? Here, FanDuel. Bet Kyron Williams over 3.5 receptions on FanDuel. Again, sleeper, you could do that as well. Let's take a peek at someone else, Jordan Whittington. And so Jordan Whittington is going to be basically the exact same thing. We do see some differences here, though. Like DraftKings is at -120. They're favoring the over more so for him to get over 3.5 receptions, whereas we go to, let's say, FanDuel as well, or Fliff. Fliff is the best one here. Fliff, over 3.5 receptions for Jordan Whittington. This is almost an arbitrage bet, actually. Let's see, is it? Arbitrage bet is where if you bet on two different sites, where you're going to get a full payout. So like you'd bet the over on Fliff 3.5 and you'd bet the under on DraftKings. Not exactly, though. I mean, payout's going to be slightly reduced, but oh well. Decent edge there. I like that specifically on Fliff, but you could do it on FanDuel as well. So with that, guys, that concludes the game-by-game breakdown. Let's go ahead and give you guys the bets of the day. But again, if you guys want access to any of the tools that you saw in this video, head on over to 9to5sports.com. If you guys have never signed up before, or if you guys are looking to sign up again, use the promo code KEEPCASH and get 20% off your first 9to5 membership. Take advantage of that. Best deal out there. So guys, I'm going to give two bets of the day out here. So this is currently the best EV bet. So if you guys are someone that is watching this video, I probably should have started with this, honestly, but these are probably going to be bumped by the time this video is uploaded. So I'm going to start with this, but I'll give you guys an actual bet of the day that I think will be there for most of you guys when you're watching this. And so that's going to be targeting more of these fantasy score prop bets. I did mention I like the Juwan Jennings one. That is one that I think kind of stands out. Not really the best bet on the 9to5 board, but I personally really like it. And then just going with these other bets that are going to be some of the best ones on the board for PrizePicks. Now let's go ahead and jump on into Underdog. And then get into the Underdog bet of the day. We are coming in off of a Thursday in which we won a half a unit, basically because the Underdog bet of the day went, I think it was 4 for 5, maybe 5 for 6. Aaron Rodgers going off was the one that missed, which was expected. It seemed like we were having a better day on Underdog for that. So probably shouldn't even put out a PrizePicks slip, but that was nice. Putting at 12.5 units on the season. So hopefully these two bets of the day that I put out to you guys hit on Underdog, but obviously give you guys a bunch of bets. And if you guys are someone that doesn't play on PrizePicks or Underdog as well, give you guys a bunch of bets to potentially go out and target there. That's going to be all for this video, guys. Obviously a big deep dive. A like is definitely appreciated. Even more so a subscribe is appreciated. If there was any bets that you guys really loved that I called out, let us know in the comment section. Obviously, we're always trying to help each other out here. If you guys want access to any of the 9to5sports.com tools, head on over there, 9to5sports.com, get access for $10 a month. But when you use the promo code KEEPCASHING, get the first month for $8. All right, thanks for watching. Good luck. And as always, let's keep cashing.